In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. There's a field of study called Kalam, or Islamic theology, which was central in the old madrasas. It deals with the truths of faith, proving God's existence, presenting all sorts of evidence, and exploring God's names and attributes. The scholars of this field spend a great deal of time on these subjects. The topics of God's knowledge, power, will, and the proofs for his existence were things they really focused on. In the text, it says, through the manifestations of divine knowledge, will, and power in the universe. What does that mean? Think about it. When a flower blooms, that's a manifestation of power, right? Or when the sun is created, when clouds form, when rain falls, when so many living beings are created and their sustenance is brought forth from the soil. All of this points to an immense power. These are reflections of his power. Even the movement of an atom points directly to that power, because an atom has no strength of its own. Okay, so the atom moves. You could say some force is moving it. But what if that atom, as it moves, helps form a beautiful flower or a line of beautiful calligraphy? Then you'd say, there's not just power here, but knowledge too. The force moving it also knows how to make a flower or write poetry. And then you might ask, why is it writing at all? You'd say, there must be a will. So, no matter what we look at in the universe, we see the reflections of knowledge, will, and power. This leads to affirming them with faith based on the certainty of sight. What is the certainty of sight? Well, if someone tells you, believe that God has power, you say, I believe. Believe he has knowledge, I believe. Believe he is merciful, I believe. That's a kind of faith you get from learning. But when you see it with your own eyes, when you see that power bringing order to the universe, creating all these beings, that is the certainty of sight. It's like if a man says, I have this much strength, how would I know? But when we say God has limitless power, we have a massive work of art, like the universe right in front of us. That makes it a certainty of sight. We see the manifestations of his power in the universe with our own eyes. We watch the flower open, the fruit grow, the seed become a tree. We can feel the reflection of his power there. And from that power, we use our intellect to connect to the owner of that power. First we see, then we think. If there's a manifestation of power here, there must be an owner of that power. We arrive at that conclusion through knowledge. So by affirming these manifestations in the universe with the certainty of sight or of knowledge, we find a path to fully believe, with the certainty of knowledge, in the self-evident existence and oneness of the necessary being. Yes, if there is power, there must be an owner of that power. If there is knowledge, consciousness, there must be an owner of that consciousness. This leads us to the necessary being's existence being self-evident, blatantly obvious. He exists, and he is one. All right. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. We will make short references to this extremely important truth of faith concerning divine knowledge. Let's break down this sentence. What does he mean by divine knowledge? For example, if I asked you to build a car, what would you say? You'd say, I don't know how. If you knew how, you could do it. Or if I asked you to build a watch, you can only do it if you know how. Every profession is like that. You write reports, right? If you didn't know how to write a report, you couldn't do it. You have to know first. Or if I say, cook me an eggplant dish, if you don't know the recipe, you can't make it. It starts with knowing. Now God creates a tree. This means that before he creates it, he knows how to create it, what he is going to create. Right? Look at the new building they're putting up next door. Didn't the builders know what they were going to do before they started? Of course. First, they design it in their minds. They say, I'm going to build a 6-story building here. They'll all be one-bedroom apartments with 4 shops on the ground floor. They have the plans, the blueprints, everything. Then they start the work. In the same way, every detail, every feature of every single thing God has created exists down to the last atom within God's knowledge. Think about DNA. God creates DNA. He gives form to those atoms. If he didn't know what he was doing, could he create DNA? So God's knowledge encompasses everything that currently exists in the universe. He then wills to create it, and with his power, he creates it. So just as God's power holds sway over every atom in the universe, his knowledge is also aware of everything, down to every atom. Both are all-encompassing. The text calls this extremely important truth of faith. Why is it so important to know that God has this knowledge? Well, for one, it means nothing is a coincidence. Nothing is random. Everything is made according to a plan, a program, within a framework of destiny. And that means he knows us too. He chose for us to be this way. He willed it. Knowing about God's knowledge saves you from heedlessness. It makes you realize his greatness. I mean, what can a single person know? At most, you know the job you do. But what does God know? He knows everything he has ever created, and he creates accordingly. You begin to grasp the sheer magnitude of his greatness. There are many valuable insights like this that come from learning that God is all-knowing. Just as mercy reveals itself as clearly as the sun through its wondrous provisions and decisively proves the existence of a merciful and compassionate one behind the curtain of the unseen, so too does knowledge, which is mentioned in hundreds of Quranic verses and is in one respect the foremost of the 7 sacred attributes, reveal itself like the light of the sun through the wisdom and fruits of order and measure, and decisively proclaims the existence of an all-knowing one. This is a beautiful sentence that really requires some thought. Just as mercy reveals itself as clearly as the sun through its wondrous provisions. Let's think about that phrase, wondrous provisions. What is sustenance? Everything you eat is a provision, but why wondrous? Every single provision is magnificent, isn't it? You eat a banana, it's amazing. A peach, it's amazing. A tomato has its own beauty. Real honey is indescribable. Every provision is wondrous, and God gives us hundreds of them. He gives them at the right time. For example, when a baby is born, its stomach can't digest solid food. So God provides a liquid sustenance. It contains all the minerals, proteins, everything the baby needs. It's not too cold, not too hot, but perfectly warm for the baby's mouth. And it's sweet. That milk is a wondrous thing, perfectly suited for the baby to digest. It's given with such wisdom. If you contemplate every provision, you'll see this. So what do these provisions show? Mercy reveals itself as clearly as the sun and decisively proves the existence of a merciful and compassionate one behind the curtain of the unseen. Imagine we're sitting in this room and there's a closed curtain. We can't see what's behind it. But when you're thirsty, a pitcher of water comes through the curtain, just right for you. When you're hungry, a tray of food appears, exactly what you need. When you're sick, a healing herb that's the perfect remedy for your ailment comes through. What would you say? You'd say, there's someone behind that curtain who is kind to us, who has compassion for us, who is showing us mercy. You'd know they see you, they know your needs, and they are constantly taking care of you. They don't show themselves, but your needs are met. It's the same in our lives. Whatever we need is being provided. We need air, you open your mouth, and oxygen is right there. You need light, it comes from the sun. You plant seeds, and rain comes from the clouds. The earth yields melons, watermelons, tomatoes, cucumbers. You can't help but say, there is someone who loves us, who is compassionate, and is constantly showing us mercy. Mercy just means He's doing good for us, meeting our needs. Could this happen on its own? No. There must be someone behind it all who is truly compassionate, merciful, and beneficent. Is there even a need to prove it? The gifts themselves are the proof. The text says it reveals itself like the sun. What does that mean? It's obvious. You can't cover it up. And like the sun, it's everywhere. Go to Adana, you see the sun. Go to Ankara, you see the sun. Wherever you go, God's mercy is manifesting. It's self-evident. And like the sun, you don't need another light to see it. It is its own light. You don't need something else to prove God's mercy. Mercy itself is the proof. This mercy decisively proves His existence. If someone can't see this after receiving hundreds of thousands of blessings, all perfectly suited for them, then the problem is with them. They have some kind of intellectual problem. It says decisively, meaning without a doubt. So too does knowledge, which is mentioned in hundreds of Quranic verses, meaning the fact that God is all-knowing is stated in hundreds of verses. When something is mentioned so often in the Quran, it's because of its importance and is, in one respect, the foremost of the 7 sacred attributes. Have you learned about God's 7 attributes? Life, knowledge, will, power, hearing, sight, and creating. Among these 7, knowledge is, in one respect, the very first. Why might that be? Well, without knowledge, what would power create? Knowledge seems to be the starting point. Power creates, but what does it create? It creates what knowledge has laid out. It's like a builder who looks at a blueprint and then builds. Or will, what does it will? It first wills what is in the divine knowledge. It's as if the attribute of knowledge is intertwined with all the others. And why are they called sacred attributes? Sacred means flawless, perfect, without any deficiency. Humans have these attributes too, but ours are flawed. Our strength is limited. Our knowledge is incomplete, sometimes wrong, and learned over time. We might will something and then forget it a moment later. But when we think of these attributes in God, they are free from all human flaws and imperfections. His power is sacred, meaning He can create whatever He wants, however He wants, whenever He wants, without limit. His knowledge has no deficiency. So sacred means we must conceive of them as being infinitely perfect. Knowledge reveals itself through the wisdom and fruits of order and measure. Just as a merciful being revealed His mercy through provisions, an all-knowing being reveals His knowledge by giving everything order and measure. For example, if I asked you to build an airplane, you'd know it needs wings, a tail, an engine. When you assemble them properly, you're giving it order. You have to place everything in its proper, wise place. That's order, or nizam. But what if you put wings on that were bigger than the plane itself? This time, the wings need to be proportional to the plane. Not too big, not too small. That's measure, or mizan. Look at us. God gave us eyes, a head. He put everything in its proper place. Legs on the bottom for walking, arms on the side. This is order, and because of it, we get the fruit of being able to use our bodies. But if my leg were 3 meters long, it would be out of proportion. It would be in the right place, but the wrong size. Useless. If my arm could reach to America, I couldn't use it to eat. But look, it's perfectly measured. You bring your hand to your mouth without a thought. This combination of perfect placement, order, and perfect proportion, measure, shows that the one who made it is all-knowing. He knows where to put things, and he knows what size they should be. And just as the provisions left no room for doubt about God's mercy, the order and measure in creation, with their wise purposes and benefits, reveal themselves like the light of the sun, and decisively proclaim the existence of an all-knowing one. An all-knowing one means one who knows everything. He created me, but he also put a liver inside me. He also created oxygen. So if he created my lungs, he must also know about oxygen, right? An engineer who builds a diesel engine must know about diesel fuel. God created lungs, so he knows the oxygen they need to work. He creates oxygen from trees, which take in our carbon dioxide, so he must know trees and how to make them produce oxygen. And to create a tree, he needs to know about seeds, soil, the sun. Nothing in the universe exists in isolation. Everything is connected to everything else. Therefore, if he knows one thing, he must know everything. This decisively proclaims his existence, meaning there's no room for doubt or hesitation. Yes. The comparison between a human's well-crafted art, which points to their consciousness and knowledge, and the beautiful creation of a human being, which points to the Creator's knowledge and wisdom, is like the ratio of a firefly's flicker in the night to the all-encompassing light of the sun at midday. This is another sentence that requires real thought. A human's well-crafted art, which points to their consciousness and knowledge. For example, a painter creates a painting. It has a theme. It's beautiful. From this, we understand that the painter is a conscious, intelligent being with a will. If he draws a sheep, you don't ask, "What is that?" You say, "It's a sheep." This means the artist knows what a sheep is. Or a tailor sews a suit. If the arms and legs are perfectly fitted, you say, "This person knows the science of tailoring." If someone is doing something with order and measure, you know they are conscious and knowledgeable. Could a person who has lost their consciousness do a proper job, let alone speak coherently? No. But look at a master craftsman. Look at the engineers who design a mobile phone. Do hundreds of them get together and just move randomly until a phone pops out? Of course not. When a beautiful work of art is produced, you can be absolutely certain that the makers are knowledgeable and conscious. The beautiful creation of a human being, which points to the Creator's knowledge and wisdom. The most important phrase here is the beautiful creation of a human being. Think about the beauty of human creation. Externally, our form is a perfect design. Internally, whatever is needed is there. Heart, kidneys, stomach, intestines. The heart has been working non-stop since we were in the womb. What kind of machine is that? It pumps tankers full of blood every single day. When you run, it speeds up because your muscles need more oxygen. Does the heart have a mind of its own to think, "I'd better speed up or he'll run out of oxygen"? No. When you stop, it slows down. It's a perfect creation. Or think about the immune system. When a hostile germ enters your body, the entire defense system goes on alert. Antibodies swarm, the liver converts fat to sugar for quick energy for the cellular soldiers. The whole body works in concert to destroy the invader. How could your body possibly know how to do all this? We are created in the most beautiful form, and that's just the body. We also have a mind, a heart, feelings, love, friendship. We are magnificent in every way. This masterpiece, the human being, points to the knowledge and wisdom of its creator. Let's take just the eye. The lens in this phone is made in a special factory with extreme precision. We have a lens in our eye too, a literal lens. Where is that lens manufactured? The very existence of that lens, suspended perfectly in the middle of our eye, focused precisely on the retina, should be enough. And it's a living lens. It thins to see far, thickens to see close, widens in the dark. Doesn't the creation of such a lens point to God's knowledge? It's more than enough proof on its own. So you look at this phone and infer the knowledge of its maker. You look at a human being and infer the knowledge of their creator. Now he says to compare the two. The comparison is like the ratio of a firefly's flicker in the night to the all-encompassing light of the sun at midday. Have you ever seen a firefly? It's a tiny little bug with a light on its end. You see that tiny flicker and you say, there must be a bug there. That tiny light pointing to a tiny bug is like human knowledge. Now compare that to the sun, which illuminates the entire world, pointing to its own existence. A human makes one thing and it points to his knowledge. But God creates everything, the animals, their food, the sun, the moon, the flowers, the insects. The evidence for God's knowledge is like the light of the sun, and even greater. The light of a firefly versus the light of the sun. You might say you've never seen a firefly, but if you say you've never seen the sun. Now, before explaining the proofs for divine knowledge, we will look at the ascension of Muhammad, peace be upon him. On that night, when he was honored with the divine presence and address, he witnessed how that sacred attribute of knowledge manifests in all species in the universe, revealing the all-holy being in a most evident way. On behalf of all living beings and all species of creation, for whom he was an envoy and ambassador, he said, all greetings, blessed things, prayers, and good words are for God. Yet, he presented this in place of a simple greeting, offering to the Creator the gifts of all conscious beings and the ways in which they make their Lord known through the manifestations of the attribute of knowledge. The only person to have been granted an audience with God was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. During his ascension, or Mi'raj, he went into God's presence and spoke with him. The Prophet, upon entering the divine presence, spoke these four phrases: Et-Tahiyyatu, El-Mubarakatu, Es-Salawatu, Et-Tayyibatu Lillah. He did this as an envoy and ambassador on behalf of all living creatures. When he came before God, he was our representative, presenting our prayers, our praise, and our needs to God. And he offered this greeting in the way that all creatures make their Lord known through the manifestations of the attribute of knowledge. For example, you look at a tree. It grows, blossoms, and gives fruit. The state of that tree makes its Lord known. A cat runs, a bird flies, the sun shines. Everything in the universe points to God's existence. The Prophet was essentially saying, I have seen the signs and testimonies that point to you in all of creation. I believe in them, and I have gathered all of them within myself to present them to you. For example, the first word, tahiyyat, relates to life. Who gives life to all humans? God. Who gives life to all animals? God. The Prophet is saying, O my Lord, this is how I know you. I know you as the one who gives life to all living things. Recognizing this, I have come into your presence. Mubarakat refers to blessed things like seeds and embryos. Salawat refers to the prayers of believers. Tayyibat refers to the pure thoughts and spiritual insights of the righteous. He is presenting the gifts of all beings to their Creator. The four phrases show the greetings, congratulations, worship, and beautiful recognition that the four categories of all living things offer to the knower of the unseen through the manifestations of eternal and everlasting knowledge. For this reason, reciting this sacred dialogue of the Ascension with its vast meaning has become a mandatory duty for all of Islam in the Tashahhud. The Tashahhud is the sitting part of our prayer. As we sit there reciting the Tahiyyat, we are reenacting a small version of that ascension. The prayer itself is a kind of ascension. The four phrases represent four categories of all living things. At-Tahiyyatu represents all living things, animals, humans, even trees. El-Mubarakatu represents blessed things like seeds and embryos. Think about it. With all our science and technology, can we make a single apple seed? You can't. It's a miracle, a testament to God's greatness and knowledge. Es-Salawatu represents all believers who pray and worship. The Prophet is saying, I have brought their worship to you. And Et-Tayyibatu represents the pure, the prophets, the saints, and their profound spiritual knowledge. The Prophet saw the testimony in all four of these groups and presented them all to God. He does this by seeing the manifestations of eternal and everlasting knowledge. Our knowledge is acquired. We learn things. God's knowledge is eternal. He doesn't learn. We forget. His knowledge never diminishes. This is offered to the knower of the unseen, God. And because these words encompass all this, reciting this sacred dialogue of the Ascension has become a mandatory duty in the Tashahhud. We say Allahu Akbar, rising through spiritual ranks until at the end, in the Tashahhud, it's as if we have reached the Divine Presence and are offering that same greeting. This is why it's a mandatory duty. It's your job to see all of creation, to reflect on it, and to see how it points to God. When we read this lesson and then we pray with focus, won't these meanings come to mind when we recite those words? Of course they will. We'll think of all living things, of the seeds, of the prayers of the righteous.